De facto. It's a weird word. What does it actually mean? You may have been living together with someone for some time, and you might not be sure whether you are de facto or just dating. And today we're going to be talking about what de facto actually means, the implications for being de facto, the difference between de facto and married, and what it means for property settlement and kids matters. So if you are in that world of de facto, this is a perfect episode for you. Welcome, Mum.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, Mum, this is de facto, the word, which everyone knows technically what it means, but no one actually, I don't actually know what it actually means.
Okay. Some people think it's something less than being married, but actually the word's de facto, and I didn't do Latin, but I'm reliably informed that it means in fact. In fact, you are the wife, or in fact, you are the husband. So de facto husband, de facto wife, they're the terms that we use in the courts and in your affidavits and so forth.
Okay, so it just means in fact married.
Yeah, it means you didn't have a registered person say that.
There you go. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. But before we do, just a reminder, Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. Any information you receive today, please double-check or cross-check it with your legal support because everybody's situation is different. And also, when it comes to WA, there are some slight differences as well. So we will touch on that, but make sure you always get your own independent legal advice before making any decisions or actions. Let's get to the jingle and let's get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Why should someone care whether or not they are actually in a de facto relationship?
To be able to get property settlement in the family court, if you're not actually married, you have to have been in a de facto relationship for 2 years at least, right? There are a couple of other grounds if you've got a child or if there've been substantial mingling of funds. The basic test is that you've been in a de facto relationship for 2 years. And because it isn't marked at the beginning with a ceremony, and it may, in fact, be something like you start leaving a toothbrush and then a little bit more clothes, and then one day your lease is up and you decide to move in. It's a gradual thing. It's not a ta-da. So it's important to know because people will debate that. And also similarly with the separation, with the de facto, there's no divorce to have, so it can similarly just sort of trail off. But you've got to be able to prove start and end.
Because it is something that seems to be happening more and more because people are choosing not to get married. But before you know it, a year's gone past, or 2 years gone past, and you might have been living with your boyfriend and all of a sudden you might step into this realm of de facto without even realizing it. And like you said, on the other side of that, you may end up stepping out of your de facto relationship in your divorce by having those 2 years after breakup. Is it 2 years?
Yes, you've got 2 years after breakup and arguments happen about when the breakup happened because people who don't want to share their assets will try to say the de facto relationship started much later or that it ended much earlier. So there's a lot of argy-bargy there. And people don't just suddenly introduce someone as their de facto. And you may never have even thought of yourself as being in a de facto relationship. It may be in fact.
On so many of the TikToks and Instagram reels that we do, where we're talking about property settlement or child support, one of the go-to messages that, I don't know, some person in their basement who has nothing better to do with their life decides to comment on our reels and they say, that's why, guys, you never get married, or that's why I'm never going to be married, or, It's kind of funny because that's the attitude people have. But then if you haven't married, but you are de facto because you've been together for 2 years or you have a child or the other reasons, that means you are entitled to some of the property, right?
You could well be. You could well be entitled to some of the property. I suspect the people we're talking about in their basements, pasty-faced people in the basements may not have the time to enter into any relationship, but a de facto relationship is what it is. And it's two people living together on a genuine domestic basis.
Right. Because, I hear so many people saying my ex has said I'm not entitled to anything because we weren't married, or it's all in my name, so you can't have any of it. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up with this, because they think, oh, well, I can't get anything because I'm not married. I wasn't entitled to any of it. But that seems to be not true in Australia.
No, it's not true. It's not true. And sometimes in a de facto relationship, a person who doesn't want to get married and commit and lose some of their property will carefully pay all of the payments, perhaps for relating to the house, paying rates, insurances and the mortgage, and let their partner buy the groceries, pay for the petrol and all of the disposable things. And they think somehow that they're proving their greater contribution to a property. But you may never have thought of yourself as de facto, but the court may do.
I also get emails from people saying, oh, we never mingled our funds. We always had separate bank accounts. You know, we had our own cars, we have our own properties. So that doesn't mean we're de facto, do we? So when people think, oh, we're not going to mingle our funds, we'll have our own bank accounts and keep our income separate, does that protect them from being called de facto?
They are de facto if they've lived together for 2 years on your genuine domestic basis, or if they have a child or they mingled their funds. So if they haven't mingled their funds, don't have a child, then the 2 years still builds up to, it can be a de facto relationship. But the fact that they've never mingled their funds can lead the court to not make orders for property settlement. They basically can look at it if it's a 2-year relationship or brief relationship and go, you know what, guys? Just keep what you've got. What are you doing here?
Right. Okay. So we're going to talk about short and long in a minute because there's two different things. So let's just reiterate the legal definition of de facto. Is it in the Family Law Act somewhere, or is it? Yes?
It is. But you'll hop around a bit. It's de facto what is described in this. But the essence is that two parties living together in a genuine domestic relationship.
Do they have to be sleeping together?
No, they don't. I dare say there are a lot of people for a lot of reasons who are living together but not sleeping together. But it's not like it's just a flatmate, if you know what I mean. It's got to be that you've set up in a relationship. When I first saw the rules, I thought if they're not careful, they're going to end up that everyone who sleeps in a backpackers hotel is de facto with everyone else, because they're in the same room. Yes. But that's not the case. So that's why I think the court has this definition of a genuine domestic relationship. And it is the give and take of a relationship, attending each other's Christmas parties, or one person paying these expenses, the other paying that, or, half and half on the electricity. It's that.
All right. So it's on a genuine domestic basis. Now, we have a really good episode called Separated Under One Roof. And we talk about, because you've got to draw a line as to when you are separated, but some people can't really do that definitively by moving out. So you have to do it in other ways while living under one roof.
Yes.
And you talk about some cases in there of the judge ruled because they had separate fridge areas. That meant that they weren't together. So go and listen to that episode if you want to figure out how to prove that you are no longer together. And that would be a really good episode.
One of the big things, because this is new, only in the last 4 or 5 years that people are separating under one roof routinely. It used only to come up when people were applying for a divorce, and the court had to be sure that the people had been separated for 12 months. So there was an inquiry into their love life. Did they watch TV together? Did they cook meals for each other? Did they do washing for each other? And we had all of that sort of evidence in this case that I was part of. And the clincher was when a third party said, oh, I saw him come in and put his groceries on the shelf. But, these people, they'd attended a wedding together, and there was a picture of them at the wedding, and that post-dated their alleged separation. So the judge was very concerned they might not have actually been separated. So your public persona matters in terms of separated or not.
Okay. All right. So if you are listening to this, and whether you're trying to prove that you were in a de facto relationship, or you're trying to prove that you weren't in a de facto relationship, or you're trying to get your property settlement or kids stuff sorted with de facto, they should be paying attention to making notes about their relationship timeline, like dates and times and things.
Do the chronologies. people who are married can also have one or two de factos. The court's been very clear on that a person could still be going home to the one family, but have another one or two relationships. And some of them shared rental houses, shared purchases, shared children. So don't think because you're not under one roof or you only have your partner with you 2 or 3 nights a week that it is definitely not de facto. It may be de facto, but you've got to be careful, Laura, because if there's a big debate about it, right, and when the court finally makes up their mind, if they find that it's against you, that it wasn't a de facto relationship, you may well be up for paying costs for the other side, but you certainly will have to pay your own legal fees. So you need to think about, is it worth it, I guess.
Okay.
And one other thing is if someone goes into hospital because they're sick, or in elderly people, someone goes into a nursing home, you're not separated. Someone goes to the nursing home, that's not separated. They're there for medical reasons, the same with the doctor. So the whole area gets blurry when you live under one roof and I guess there's no marriage or divorce. The whole area is quite blurry.
Okay. Is there any difference between the rest of Australia and WA?
No, I just read today in practice directions and they are operating. As you know, I'm no expert in family law in WA, but it appears that they also have all of the same rights as the rest of Australia. They're governed by the Family Law Act, and now there's super splitting as well for de factos, according to the West Australia Family Law website.
All right. So let's talk about the difference between a long de facto relationship and a short de facto relationship. So does that make a difference if you have a short relationship to a long?
Actually, the law for de facto relationships mirrors the law for marriage. So there's cases about short de facto relationships where people only get 5% of the property pool or maybe none of the property pool. But there's also lots of cases about family law and what constitutes a short relationship and what constitutes a long one. And in fact, one of the books that I subscribe to for my research sets out the number of years, the number of kids, what the initial contribution was and what the split ends up being. And there's a quick, like a ready record. And go, okay, this relationship, de facto it was 2 years, 10% of the property pool to the other person. And frankly, they probably had that when they moved in.
Right.
So the court tends to let things stay with the people that had them to start with.
So if it's a short-term de facto relationship, so 2 to 3.
Well, it's got to be 2 years plus to be in
What's
the eye of the court
short?
or with
How many
the child.
years is considered short?
A couple of years.
So like 4?
Years. Yeah. Yes, 3,
4. So if
5.
3, 4, 5.
If they've got kids,
okay,
it's
we'll
harder.
talk about kids in a minute. So pretending they don't have kids, it's a short-term de facto relationship of 2 to 5 years, 2 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
They go in. Basically, you're saying they go in with what they have, and sometimes they come out with what they have had.
That's right. It's very often that they come out with what they had, unless it would be unconscionable for the person to just go out with what they had. For instance, there are cases where someone comes in, they don't have a lot of money. They may even have some debt. The other person has property, and the person with not much gives a lot of effort in renovations and, getting planning permissions and so forth, that they've made a contribution to the ultimate value of the other person's property. And it would be just plain rude for them not to get a fair share, or unconscionable for them not to get some of that to reflect their contributions. So they still apply. The court still applies the contributions rule and the future needs and current and future circumstances rule. And the length of the marriage or de facto relationship only impacts to the extent that the court would say, first of all, the relationship probably didn't impact or impair any party's ability to earn. If you were only married for 2 years or living together for 2 years, it's not the same as if you were together for 20 years and you've been supporting the other person in their career and lost your training or lost your opportunities. So that's where the short and long comes in, and it comes in terms of contributions.
All right. So we've got some great episodes on contributions before, during and after, and we've also got the future needs and current circumstances episode. You can go and listen to that. I'll put them in the show notes. So that's for de facto and married. So we've said short is up to 5 years. So again, I guess long is pretty much anything after that, really. But like you said, Mum, it's all a bit arbitrary. There's no written rule.
Yeah. I mean, one thing is that they say, look, a short marriage is only anything under 12 years. We used to say that. And each child adds an imaginary 4 years to your relationship. I don't think that holds true anymore, because there are plenty of people now who break up in that 12-year range. It's not as rare as it used to be. And I think now the court calls a short relationship the 4 or 5 years. But if you've got a child, then there's opportunities there that you may have made other contributions for the child, and you've certainly got your future needs in terms of caring for the child, even if you've only got them half the time.
Right. Okay. All right. So in a long relationship, that's when that it's less about what you brought in, and it's more about making sure it's fair on the way out. In a
yes.
Like I'm just is that a good summary?
It's kind of that, yes. So it's the opportunity for a person who didn't bring in finances, right, who didn't bring in financial contribution, the opportunity for them over the attrition of time, over the length of time, to gradually have made additional contributions. It doesn't have to be over and above the other person, but if you're there working together and making contributions, then the court will look at your contributions. So a long marriage, the opportunity to make more contributions is there. Even a 10-year relationship, the opportunity for contributions is there. But in a 2, 4, 3-year relationship with no children, the other person's value of property they brought in, there's really very little reason that I can think of where a court would not give that person at least most of it, maybe 5% to the other person if they can prove they made a contribution, or that they're going to be broke going forward. But generally, the number I'll go right out on a limb here, but generally, for a 2 to 4 year relationship, no kids, perhaps no mingling of finances, remembering that both parties have something in their name. You've either got your house, you might have your castle, you might have super. I'm seeing very small differentiation between what they already have and any movement from one person to another. It might be 5%, might be 10%. Looked at a case today where it was 90 and 10%.
Okay.
For a short relationship, and that was a child.
Well, let's go to kids then, shall we? Okay, so having children, does that give you more of a chance of more property, or does it just get not looked? Is there any difference if you have kids and you're de facto? Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section, where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today. Well, let's go to kids then, shall we? Okay, so having children, does that give you more of a chance of more property, or does it just get not looked? Is there any difference if you have kids and you're de facto?
Yep, absolutely. First of all, if you're out of time in a relationship, the court will look at whether it's going to cause hardship to a child. If you're out of time to apply, you might be able to get the court to open it up and let you have a property settlement. Similarly, if you haven't been together for 2 years, therefore, the Family Law Act, you would think, isn't going to have anything to do with sorting out your property, but you've got a child, then the court will let that happen. So in that case, you may only have been de facto for 5 months, 3 months, but that is still a de facto relationship for the purpose of property settlement.
So just confirming that de facto technically is 2 years, but if you have a kid with the person, then you're de facto automatically.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Oh, is that right? No. Yeah. I think the better way of saying it, sweetheart, is if you've got de facto is 2 years for property settlement, but if you've got a child, you don't have to have been for 2 years. That's an alternative way to get the jurisdiction of the court.
Right.
So you could only have lived together for 6 months or 2 months or 1 month or whatever.
So does it affect your property settlement if you have children? Do you get a larger percentage?
Yes.
Okay. Why is that?
Because of your contributions during that short relationship.
Okay.
And also because of your current and future circumstances, assuming you're going to be involved in the raising of the child. If one person has 90% of the property in their name, it would seem very unfair for you to walk out with, say, 5 or 10% when you've got a child to raise. And the third limb of that, Rose, is the mixing your finances and working together with your finances.
All right. Okay. Now, how do you prove that you've been in a de facto relationship? What do those people do who maybe been in a relationship with someone and they thought it was de facto and their ex is saying, no, we weren't de facto?
Of course they are.
How do you prove that? And does the court, are there any specific forms or things you need to fill in?
Proving it is hard. And of course, a lot of people who know very well they were in a de facto relationship may try to deny it if it suits them financially. In fact, if there's a dispute about whether or not there is whether or not there was a de facto relationship, the court will have a discrete little hearing just on that fact.
Oh.
And yes, because if it's not, then those two people go away and don't clog up the court for the rest of the time, and it keeps your costs down. If they were, then it stops the other person refusing to negotiate because there's the court may find that we weren't de facto. So they make a finding one way or another. They make a declaration.
So what's that called? Is it just?
It's called discrete hearing and a declaration of the existence of a de facto relationship. Somewhere in Section 90 of the family.
So if someone's ex is saying we're not de facto and you're saying we are de facto, I want a property settlement.
Or we were de facto.
The first thing that they might have to do is do a discrete hearing with the courts to prove that they were.
Yes, or when they were.
Right.
Okay, so if you didn't have children, for instance, then the other person might agree you were in a de facto relationship, but they don't think it made up to 2 years, therefore you can't go to the family court. Whereas you say, hang on a minute, we were. And then you ask the court for a declaration that you were in a de facto relationship for the purposes of the Family Law Act and you're eligible for property settlement.
So what kind of things do you provide the court to prove that you were de facto?
I want everyone listening to sort of imagine, what would you do? You'd rack your brains, right? And you don't write anything except perhaps change your Facebook status or put it on Insta that you're in a couple. And so it's documents all the way. And by that I include electronic documents. So it might be as simple as a photo of your moving day into the house, or it might be, could you pick milk up on the way home? Sort of text message sort of things. Or it could be a handwritten note where you've divided the chores in the house. It's that sort of thing that builds up a picture. And I tell you, everyone has a photo at Christmas near the tree or opening a present, and they can be great documented of the dates and times.
What about leases for rentals or
all
text
that.
messages?
Yep. If you're both on the lease, that's good. If you're not on the lease, but your lease ends, maybe you can provide evidence of that and that you didn't renew. Yeah, text the address you put on the
It's not, it wouldn't be text messages saying, I love you so much and you're the world to me, because that technically...
You could just say that to anyone.
It's got to be domesticated kind of things like grocery shopping,
genuine,
organising calendar events, going to things together, that kind of thing.
It's kind of that. And thinking if someone's married to someone else, they can still have this de facto relationship. Like, I'll be over tonight. Can you cook that spag bog I like so much? And are we going to the markets tomorrow? I know you need a new air conditioner, whatever. It's that sort of thing that shows that you are living in a domestic relationship. Sometimes evidence from other people, but they invariably end up being on your side or the other person's side, and the court can be a little bit wary because they have a team that they promote. But photos of you guys at the pair of your weddings or functions if you are going out publicly as a couple. But you can be a clandestine de facto relationship where, it's a little bit like the concubine situation where you might be set up in a flat and only see the person when they can get to see you. It's a bit.
If someone doesn't want to go to all the effort of having to go to court to have a discreet hearing, is there anything else they can do? Can they ask their pretend de facto to go to mediation to present the evidence they would present at court to try and get them to come around, or is really the only way to go to court?
I think people will attend mediation if there's a dispute with that by and large, because even if they are proved to be right and the court doesn't say that you have a de facto relationship, it'll still cost them because you will generally not be ordered to pay every single cent or indemnity costs. So they'll be out of pocket. And if I were mediating something like that, I would ask them to think about what it's going to cost them, even if they're 100% sure they're right. How much is it going to cost you to do that? And how long is it going to take? And why don't you make an offer to him of that amount? Just go away money just to stop it. So mediations are good. And if you, in fact, bring all of your material, which you should have sent beforehand, remember, you've still got that obligation of disclosure, even if you're not sure you're going to get into family court. If you've got documents, send them all over, because you're not just convincing your ex, who genuinely may not remember, right, may have blurred the lines. We all say things and then we say it over and over again, and then you show them the proof and they go, oh, I'm absolutely gobsmacked. So get that evidence over, convince their lawyer that it's risky, convince your ex that it's risky to try to fight it, and once you move them off their solid belief that there's no money coming to you at all, and why should they give you anything? Once you can move them off that and start talking about costs, talking about the strength of your evidence and the risk that they might actually be found to be in a de facto relationship, then you can start them to move towards giving some money over just to end it. Because imagine if you go and get a discreet hearing and it says you are de facto and in a relationship, you're going to go for as much as you think you can get
in costs,
from the other person.
In legal fees?
No, not just in costs. Yeah, but your case, because there's no doubt in your mind anymore about whether or not you'll win. But if you've both got doubt, the other person, whether they might lose or win, you've got doubt. What if I lose? Well, you know what? Let's settle in the middle somehow. So I really do recommend showing all of your documents, and mediation is a good way to go.
Okay, so the other thing is, because you just said, in some people's minds, they'd be like, well, definitely not. So there may be some people out there who started a relationship while their ex was still married, because we do hear of these, someone's had an affair, they've been caught out in the affair, they've been with the person for a year, and then they're together for another year after they've left their other partner.
Yes.
And that constitutes as 2 years.
It does.
But they may think, well, no, because I was still with my ex-wife at the time, so that doesn't count. Does it count? It
does count.
Right.
It does count. It's about your relationship with this person, not the relationship you had with your wife or whether your wife knew about it. So if you ever ended up in court, and we'll probably touch on this, I think, but you'll have one case between the wife and the husband, and another case between the husband and the de facto spouse, and their timeframes may overlap.
Right. Yeesh. So there is some complexity there. If you've got a cheating ex, or if you've got potentially suspecting that your ex is cheating, you're still separated under one roof. One of the things you might need to consider is they also might be de facto with somebody else. And if you all break up all at the same time, you'll all be going for a piece of the same pie.
Mm-hmm.
Holy moly.
Okay, yep. And a lot of people who are living together in a marriage, rolling along, think everything's okay. The wife finds out about the relationship, kicks the man out. He goes to his girlfriend and she goes, no, you're not coming in here. I didn't know you were still married. And so they do often end up with a double barrel case against them. And the court, you would think, would prioritise the previous relationship and then the secondary relationship. But I have seen cases where they've had to combine them.
Okay.
because it's essentially the same fact. And the wife might be saying, well, he was using our money for the girlfriend.
Oh, gosh.
Who'd be a judge?
So to anyone who's listening, when in the de facto realm, there's no black or white bookend, start here, end here, here's your divorce papers. You can get a de facto paperwork done, can't you, Mum, in the court?
You can register a civil relationship. That's not in the courts. That's in your states. But I know when the legislation came out, we had one of the barristers stand up he said, I see it's written down in the conference. I see it's written down that I was to update you on all the latest cases about civil registered de facto relationships. And I'm here to tell you we haven't had any yet in Queensland. So they're not terribly popular. I've come across probably 2 or 3.
Do
maybe. But
they do that maybe for Centrelink or something?
I don't know. They might not believe in the religious kind of thing. They might want not. But it doesn't. I should have clarified this. Good point, Laura. If you haven't reached 2 years in de facto, but you've registered your de facto relationship, then you are able to be declared de facto by the court and they can do a property settlement.
Okay.
I missed that.
Because I do
Sorry,
know
guys.
in the military, for example, if you're not married, but you want the advantages of the spouse's military, whatever, travel expenses or rental and
house,
medical, you can register as de facto with the military. So I guess even if you've been together for a year, but you are de facto in the military, I guess that you could use that paperwork as proof.
You absolutely can. And you can use it sometimes in their tax returns, they talk about it. Yeah, there's a lot. Documents are king when it comes down to arguing. Documents are king. And whatever you can find, photos or any of that evidence, yeah.
Does it get treated differently, though, if it's a married case as opposed to a de facto case? Do you ever pick up a vibe that it's treated differently with lawyers or in court, or is it just same?
I don't. I really don't think so. I think so. I think both of them are tremendously sad, and I think both sorts of relationships generally come with a very deep commitment or an expectation that things will keep going, and they're both equally sad. The days when we did treat de facto differently, that was the days before they were in the family court. So a de facto relationship was in Queensland, for instance. The legislation was the Property Law Act, 1974, maybe. And it was, 94, sorry. And it was the one, it did mortgages, transferring property and de facto in sort of the one legislation. Okay. And it happened at the Supreme Court or the District Court. So that was treated differently and very insensitively, really, in my respectful thing, because for instance, you could get hit with quite a big costs order because it was treated like a commercial thing. Now it's come over into the family court, it's just been embraced and it's really a ticker box, and it just is slightly more complex than a marriage because of the, start dates and end dates. But hardly anybody these days starts living together on the day they got married. Yeah. So, it's not much different at all.
Right. So people who are intending to get married but didn't get married yet can still be de facto if they've been together for 2 years. Wow.
Yeah. And I've had a case where the parties had a long marriage, they had property settlement, and then the lines got a bit blurry, and when the person was in town, he could stay at this house, and then he started staying over longer because of the kids, and then they built a kitchen together and got a boat. But all the time, they were married and they'd had their property settlement. When they did finally break up, the other person wanted to claim under a de facto legislation and have a second property settlement. But the first thing in a definition of de facto is the parties are unmarried persons. People who are not married to each other are still living together on a gender. And so there was a complete, that was nothing. They couldn't do anything.
So that's a good tip if you're thinking about getting back with your partner.
And you've had your property settlement already. And they, yeah.
All right. So I'm just going to quickly run by some things we hear people say, and you just give me some quick canned responses.
Quick answers. Okay.
We're not married, so it doesn't count.
That's not true.
Okay. Everything's in my name, and you're just my girlfriend, so it doesn't matter.
Well, the facts may tell a different story about if you're together on a genuine domestic basis or not.
We were never in a relationship.
Whoa. I've got photos to the contrary. I imagine we'd do that. Put your photos and put your story. But you know you're going to have a hard row to hoe if they've never suggested that.
You're just a money-hungry money grabber.
Or a hectare hunter, someone said in the country one day to me. Yeah, that's just, you know what, that sort of comment to someone that you've loved is just a definition of nasty and probably tells you a lot about that person. But I wouldn't believe them. Go and find out for yourself. Go and get your lawyer and talk about the whole situation and get their opinion.
Perfect. All right. I don't know if this has cleared too much up for anybody, but I hope really what we've come down to is de facto is pretty much treated the same way as marriage. The only differences are you have to be together for 2 years in a domesticated way to be classed as de facto, and
or have
a child.
Or have mixed your money so much that it would be unfair for you not to get a share, or you've registered under a civil relationships register.
And when you are out of time to go to court to get property settlement, it's 2 years after you have separated.
And if you've got a dispute over when you actually separated, I would urge you to be cautious and maybe file within 2 years of when they say you separated, just to be sure, get your documents in the court.
Okay. Well, there you go. It is a general discussion. This is not legal advice in any way, but we do get a lot of questions about what about de facto. So here are some answers and holy moly, there's some shocking ones there. If you have got yourself tangled up in some sort of situation where there's more than one of you and there's a de facto and a marriage or two de factos, we do have an episode on what if your partner is cheating or what if your partner moves on. Go and listen to that episode. That may help you as well.
Run, don't walk to your solicitors and find out. Yeah.
Thank you, Ma. Thanks for your time. I'll see you next week.
No worries, Darcy. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.